Hi there, Ford owners. Today in your 2019 Ford Ranger, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install REDARC's Tow-Pro Elite Brake Controller. This controller is designed to work with trailers with 1 to 3 axles. And this is what our brake controller looks like when it's installed. And this is the best feature of this brake controller, is how little footprint it takes up in your vehicle. Really all that you're going to see is this tiny little knob here. And this is how you're going to make all your adjustments to your brake controller, is right through this knob. It even has a manual adjustment, just like on your traditional brake controllers with the manual slider. This one you just push in on the knob to apply the brakes, and it's just like your manual slider. The only difference here between the manual slider is you can kind of vary in between with the slider. With this one, rather than being able to vary in between, it's just on or off, but as you turn the knob to the gain setting that you desire, it is going to apply it to that amount. So if you wanted to, you could press it in and you could slowly ramp it up, or just instantly be at the highest pressure, however you like it. But the biggest thing about this is that it's all done with this tiny little knob. We don't have a big brake controller mounted underneath our dash near our steering wheel where we're hitting our knee on it when we're getting in and out, accidentally messing up our settings when we're bumping into it, and it's just cumbersome to have another unit here. And most of the units that install on your vehicle underneath the column in this area, they have very particular mounting orientations that they need to be in, limiting where you can place them in the vehicle, which is why they often end up being here, because this is the best spot. Even though it's not an ideal spot, it usually is the best. With the REDARC, the control module can be mounted in any orientation, and we can put it anywhere we want. We've actually got ours hidden behind the dash panel here, and we can easily see it by pulling down our dash panel, as our module is located right here. With this being remotely mounted, we can keep it nice and hidden, giving us a much nicer looking install, and also just being more comfortable here in the driver's seat because we have no large clunky brake controller, just this nice little integrated knob in our dash. And when it's in a blue light mode like you see it here, that indicates that we're in proportional mode, which means it's going to be using that inertia sensor to determine how hard to apply the brakes on our trailer. We can adjust the sensitivity with our knob here, and you see as I turn it up, it's increasing because I do have my foot on the brake right now, and it goes from a shade of blue to a shade of red. To change from the proportional mode, which is our blue light mode here, we can turn our knob full counterclockwise to 0, holding our brake pedal, and then double tap our knob. And that's going to switch our light to the green light, which is going to put us in user control mode. In user control mode, it ignores the inertia sensor and just applies the brakes fully to whatever we have set on our adjustment knob here. So if we have it set to 10, every time we hit the brake, it is going to apply it to that maximum brake pressure. And vice versa, if we go down, it's going to do it to just a small amount, but it's only going to do it to exactly what we have set. It's not going to be proportional in any way or use that inertia sensor to gradually apply and release the brakes as necessary to make it feel natural. This is most often used in off-road applications where you're in a lot of mud or loose gravel where you don't necessarily want it to be proportional, you just want your brakes to work because you're in those more slippery conditions. You can switch back from this mode by just double tapping on the knob again to go back to the proportional mode. Now, as far as user input, that's really all that there is to it. You can adjust the gain right here, and you've got your 2 different modes. This brake controller does work with electric over hydraulic brakes, but requires no user inputs. It automatically is able to detect the appropriate brake output for the type of system that you have. So it's going to work with those electric over hydraulic just fine without you having to tell the brake controller that you are working with an electric over hydraulic system. It also works with 24-volt systems, so that's pretty nice. A lot of brake controllers are limited to a 12-volt system because it's the most common for vehicles, but there are 24-volt vehicles out there, and this one is ready to work with them out of the box without the user having to do anything but hook it up like they would normally. We'll begin our installation inside the vehicle on the driver's side. The panel just below the steering wheel, we're going to take this panel down. There's an opening right here for your hand to go, and you can just pull down just like that, and it's going to pop down, and it's just going to hang down like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way. There's just 2 pins here that you'll need to unscrew the center, and then you can pop the pin out. So we'll use our Phillips screwdriver to remove those. Once you've got the center tab out, we're just going to pull that out. We'll then pull the other one in the center out. And then our panel's now just going to pop out of there. These little pins are going to come out nice and easy. We'll then just get this guy out of the way. And now we want to mount the controller that comes with your kit. The controller does need to be mounted securely. We can mount it in pretty much any orientation that we want to, but it needs to stay in this position after you've got it mounted, because it's going to calibrate itself, and if it moves from this position after calibrating, it's not going to function properly. We've decided to mount it right here to the back side of this brace, so it's nice and solid. I drilled a couple of holes right here, and I just used the module on the other side as a template, just marked those holes and drilled through. Once we've got those mounted down, you will have to provide your own hardware to do so, but you can get that at your local hardware store. And down here on the bottom, it didn't really sit very flush against the panel, but to ensure it didn't move around or vibrate or anything, I just drilled a couple of holes here in the bottom of this piece of metal, and I ran some zip ties through it to zip tie it through the bottom holes to ensure that it was going to stay nice and secure. With the main brake controller module mounted up, next we're going to need to mount the remote control. And this is mounted wherever really you'd like, and it's going to plug in and give you remote capabilities of controlling the module so it can stay hidden behind this panel, but we can still access it to manually activate the brakes and adjust the sensitivity as necessary. Our customer wanted his to replace the 12-volt outlet on the driver's side. Since he has two, he's got one over here on the passenger side. So we're going to be taking this out, and REDARC does have a cover available. This cover is designed for GM and Isuzu vehicles, but it does work on some Ford vehicles, and this will snap right into place where our 12-volt outlet is. So now we know where we're going to put it. We need to get access to this to be able to put it there. There's a panel like this on each side of our radio, and these just pull right off to remove them. So we're just going to grab it here at the bottom, and we're just going to pull straight towards us. And that's just going to pop right off of there. You can see the tabs here that held it in place. Those are just quick pull tabs, so they just pull off. If any of the little white clips fall off, typically they're just going to fall down on the carpet. You can grab those and they just slide right back on, and then you're good to go. We're going to remove the panel on the opposite side now in the same way. It's just going to pull right off. Behind those panels, we're going to have one screw on each side that we're going to take off. And this is going to use a 7mm socket to remove it. And we'll just take off the other side. And our panel will now slide out of there that has our 12-volt outlets attached to them. In the center here, there are a couple of the little white pins like we had before holding it in, so it is going to take a little bit of effort to get it out. But if we just grab it on one side and just pop that one side out, then we'll grab it on this side, pop that side out, and then we can slide it forward. And now we have our connectors we'll need to disconnect from the back side of our 12-volt outlets. To remove the connector, you can press on the release tab here at the back, but I found that you have to really squeeze hard, and I don't want to hurt my thumb, so if you take a small screwdriver, you can actually just press in on the release tab here, and then just push it out, and then pull it like that. It's a lot easier on your hands. We're going to do the same thing on the other side so we can get this panel out of here to make it easier to work with. Now with our panel out, we're going to take out the 12-volt outlet on the driver's side, because that's where our customer wants it. So if we flip it over and look at the back side here, on each side, so this is the top of your switch where it shows top 12-volt, this flips up. So it's directly 90 degrees on each side of that. You're going to have a little tab, and you can just take your flat-bladed screwdriver, and we're just going to kind of just put it in there and twist to press in on that release tab. And we're just going to be kind of pushing and pulling outward as we're doing that. We're going to work the other side out as well the same way. And it is a really tight fit, so you are going to have to kind of work at it, but it will pop out of there. Just these tabs are just a little stubborn. I found it was kind of easy to hold it like this with my thumb on the back, pushing it out as I'm popping out those release tabs. Usually it's easiest if you get one side to come out first like that. Once you get the one side popped out, it usually makes it a lot easier to keep that pressure on the back and press in on those release tabs, and then it'll just pop right on out of there. We can then take our new mounting switch, and this is going to fit right into the hole. So we're just going to Slide this guy in here. Making sure we've got it in the correct orientation so we can easily read it, and then snap it in place. Because once you snap it in, it does fit pretty snug in here. You can turn it, but it is quite difficult to turn. So if you can line up those lettering first, it'll make things a little bit easier. We can now pick the switch parts that come in your kit. You're going to have a knob, a ring that's going to cover it up and also help align it, as well as our nut here. Our switch is going to poke in the back side of our switch here, and if you are using this mounting tab here, then you don't need to use the gray one. The gray one's to cover up if you just drilled out a hole in a panel. It can cover up any nasty drill marks, giving it a nice little bezel. But we don't need that bezel here. It's actually going to be in our way a bit. So we're just going to put the nut on and then tighten it down. Once you've got it tightened down, I do recommend going a little bit more snug just to make sure your switch goes on and can click. But when you put your switch on, you want to make sure you turn it all the way counterclockwise. That's going to be 0, straight up and down where our little light is there. So we're going to take the 0 on our knob and we're going to line it up and push it in place, making sure that when we're counterclockwise, it does line up with that little light. And you also want to make sure that you can easily click the button. If it doesn't click and it hangs up, then you probably don't have the nut tight enough yet, and just snug it down a little bit more, and then you'll be able to press on it like that. We'll now need to connect our switch to our module, and this is the wire that comes in your kit. It's an Ethernet style cable. It does have a 90-degree on one side and a straight fitting on the other. So before you go routing this cable, you probably want to determine which side you want each one to be on. And I went ahead and just kind of tested it by plugging it in. And the 90-degree, in our case, we don't really need a 90-degree. So this is going to be the harder one to find a place for it to go. But if we test it here on the back side of our switch, it actually clicks in and fits very nicely right down our panel here. So we're going to use the 90-degree on this side. So we're going to disconnect it now because it's going to be easier to run it from the module over to this cavity. And once we've got it routed from here to there, we'll be able to put this back together. So to get our cable routed over to the module, there's an opening just right here. So we can poke the wire in and it's going to come out right here. And then we're just going to plug the straight side here into the module. When I mounted the module, I did make sure to put the Ethernet female port side facing over this way and our 4-pole connector side facing towards the fuse box here. And so we're just going to plug this in now. Click. And then we can route this cable over. We've got a lot of excess here. We're going to probably just take the excess and bundle it up back here behind our paneling. So for now, we can just leave the excess over here until we get everything plugged in and put back together, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and plug this in and get this put back together here in the middle. So we'll just plug the 90-degree in to the back of our switch. We're then going to route our panel back into place, plugging in the passenger side 12-volt outlet. The driver side one we're just going to leave disconnected here behind our paneling. And now when we go to slide this back in, we just want to pay attention to our cable and make sure we don't pinch it behind our panel. So this is where we're going to start feeding this wire, the excess, now over towards the module. So that way we can ensure we don't damage it when going back together. When you're going back together, there are some small little tabs here that just poke into these holes, those little alignment holes. So make sure you've got both the alignment holes lined up first. And once you've got both of them lined up, we can then just take our panel here and click it back into place. You may need to just double check this connector here. It might be in your way. Just kind of tuck it back out of the way. And that'll just pop right back into place. And then just double check those, make sure those are in. Everything is looking good there, so we can reinstall our screws. And then we can snap our side panels back into place. These just push right back in. Just make sure you've got all those lined up before you give it a nice little push. We'll do the same thing on this side. So now we've got our switch hooked to our module. We need to now hook our module to the vehicle. Our Ranger here has a prep package already on it. It has a 7-way and a 4-way at the back. And if you've got both a 7-way and 4-way at the back, you've got the wires you'll need to hook a brake controller up here at the front. They are just going to be bare wires, and they're located here where the wires come out of the firewall right here. And then they kind of come out and they are taped up right here. You can kind of see where they're looped up right there. And these are our wires. They've got some blue tape wrapped around it. So we're just going to take this blue tape off and separate out our wires, and then we can start hooking them up. The blue tape's pretty thin, so you can really just rip through it. And here you can see the 4 wires that we're going to need to connect. They do have the ends just heat shrinked off so that way they can't touch anything, but we're going to need to access that, so we're going to strip back each one of these 4 wires. So we've got them all stripped back now. We're going to go ahead and start crimping our wires to our harness. We're going to start with the yellow wire with the orange stripe, and this is our hot wire. So we're going to crimp a butt connector on here. We're using yellow butt connectors for these larger wires. Now, butt connectors don't come in your kit, but you can get butt connectors here at etrailer.com. Once you've got it crimped onto the vehicle's wire, we're then going to crimp it onto our harness's wire. And this is what your harness looks like. It's got a 4-prong connector with 4 wires coming off of it. Our positive wire on our harness is going to be the black wire. So we're going to hook that one to this one to get our power. And then we're just going to finish crimping the rest of our colors together here. The blue wire is going to go to the blue wire on the vehicle, so those 2 colors are going to match. The white wire is going to go to the white wire on our vehicle, so those 2 colors are going to match. And then the last wire we have here is a violet wire with a white stripe. That's going to go to our last remaining wire on our harness, which is the red wire. So we're just going to get those crimped together, and for the smaller gauge wires here, we're going to be using blue butt connectors. We can now take our harness and we're going to route it over to our module and then plug it in. And I'm just going to go through the opening next to the fuse panel right here. We're then just going to bring this over and plug the connector right into the module. The release tab is going to be on this side, and you'll be able to access it through the opening that we have here in the metal panel that we mounted the module to. So here you can see our release tab through there, so if we do need to ever disconnect it or make any repairs, we can easily get this disconnected down the line. At this point now, we're going to take our wiring and we're going to just take the excess that we've got here, we're going to bundle it up and zip tie it all together to make sure everything stays nice and neat. That'll just ensure nothing can fall down into our pedals or anything like that. We're then just going to zip tie up the excess wire that we had for the other harness as well. With everything all zip tied up and clean, we can then reinstall our lower panel here from underneath where our steering column is. Just reinsert the pins, and then once you put the pin in, you can put the center back in to lock it in place. Once you've got both of your pins installed, the panel will just roll up and snap right back on. At this point now, we'll need to take the vehicle out, and we're going to have to go for a little test drive here in order to calibrate for the position where we've mounted it. With all of our panels back in place, the installation on our vehicle, as far as putting anything on, is complete. At this point, we do need to go for a test drive, where we're going to drive it around to get the system to calibrate. We're now in the vehicle. We're going to go for a drive here, and we've plugged in a trailer. And you can see here that it's flashing blue and green. And this is indicating that it needs to be calibrated. And it calibrates itself automatically. You just need to drive the vehicle normally, and it will calibrate itself. And it does this whenever you're stopping. As you're stopping, the inertia sensor is going to be able to detect the direction of travel and how quickly we're braking, and it's going to be able to calibrate itself. Now, it could take up to 20 brake cycles, starting and stopping, for this to occur. But as it does calibrate itself, you're going to see more and more blue and less green. It's going to be flashing with a more blue on time than the green on time. If you don't have a trailer connected, then you're probably not going to see any lights lit up here. It is still going to be calibrating itself if you don't have your trailer connected. You're just not going to get this visual indicator of what's going on. We're just going to go ahead and put it in drive now, and then we're just going to get up to speed and stop a few times here, and we're going to see how long it takes to calibrate. doing a few of these, it just seems to vary from vehicle to vehicle how quickly it's able to learn its direction of travel, and also it seems to be determined upon how you've oriented the brake controller. All that kind of just plays in a factor in how quickly it's able to determine its position. And as you can see, we're driving here, we've got a lot more blue than we do green now flashing, so it's getting pretty close to being calibrated now. And it looks like we've got a solid blue light now. One more stop just to make sure. And that completes our calibration. Now that we've got it a solid blue light, that means that it is no longer needs to determine its position. It's completed doing that, and it's ready for full function and full operation. And that completes our installation of REDARC's Tow-Pro Elite Trailer Brake Controller on our 2019 Ford Ranger.